Okay, so Ray, I always like to start. I want to ask because you're like Hall of Famer, all world, all everything. When did people start to notice that you were above average in basketball? Like, when did the chatter start to talk about, like, yo, this guy's really good?
Probably my freshman year when I got to UConn.
Really?
Yeah, well, the guys would talk about it. So this is something that I don't share with a lot of people. But I guess I had been unremarkable up to this point. Like you remember how on campus when you have the football games, you work out first and then you go over to the football game after when the football games were on campus.
Yep.
And we had like an open scrimmage in preseason, and I don't know. I guess I was just so underwhelming up to that point where I was getting steals, and I started. I was this guy that they said they didn't recognize anymore. And then afterwards, I put on a nice little jean outfit and some sunglasses. We go to the football game, and one of my teammates, he goes, "Man, Hollywood has entered the building." So for that whole year, they started calling me Hollywood because they started seeing me like show up and show out. And I didn't really understand like
Even
how.
to the way that you dress.
Yeah. And so they started talking about me as a player, like somebody who really was going to help. And I didn't know how I was going to help because I was a 18-year-old kid trying to, make my mark.
From Hillcrest in South Carolina, just on the scene.
Yeah. And
That's crazy. So, let's rewind before you even got to UConn. You and KG, were y'all on the same recruiting trip, or what was y'all's connection to the recruiting trip? Was it UConn? Y'all was on the same recruiting trip?
Yeah, KG and he was from the upper part of the state. So we had a guy that used to pick us up and take us over to, we would work out in Columbia. We'd play against the guys at USC. And so we ended up playing AAU together. So UConn was playing at NC State. So he and I got in the car and we drove to the game. We watched these guys play and, just hung out. KG he was like, man, I had already signed. So he was like encouraged and excited because he was like, this is cool. Like this school is great,
So he was happy to see you have gotten a scholarship at a big school.
Yeah. Yeah.
You didn't try to get him to come to the good side? What's up?
Well, that's what I was going to say. He ended up going to Chicago after that.
Yeah.
He was in South Carolina, and then he ended up getting recruited to play his senior year in Chicago. And then, the rest is history. He wasn't even going to school. So he just cut that whole middle.
He got straight to the business. Okay, so we're both UConn alum. Talk to me about it, because I came from West Virginia, went to Stores Country. You came from South Carolina, went to Stores. Talk about just what that was like, just culture-wise, everything. Like, what was that like just getting there?
Well, my background is so nondescript because I grew up in the military. So I had come from California before I got to South Carolina. So I didn't really consider myself a country bumpkin, as people would call me. I did incorporate a little Southern accent after having been there for 5 years. But it was interesting because in South Carolina, I wasn't from there. So they didn't claim me as being from there. And I still took on a lot of, the effervescence of what the South was all about, being there at those impressionable years of my life, from middle school to high school. So a lot of my first happened there. So it did help build into who I am. And even in the same token, if I don't go to South Carolina, I don't end up being the person or the man, the player that I am, because, I had to navigate through being in the South. I had to develop a thicker skin.
Yes.
It made me a little bit tougher because everywhere I had been, I grew up on military bases. So these places they were very controlled. People, everybody was rooting for you. You had the best of everything. It was like being at a private school enclosed on a base. And, we had the best lunches, the best textbooks, the best teachers, everything. So when I got to South Carolina, it was the opposite.
It was almost a downgrade, nothing
was.
towards South Carolina, but if you're already getting that schooling and that treatment and that attention, then I feel like anything is almost a downgrade from there.
Yeah. So every school that I had gone to was funded by the Department of Defense. So you're talking about, so you're talking on these military installations where, you know, when money is going to, you know, our troops, the military, it's providing for these installations all around the world. So the school systems that support the families that are there, the teachers typically are mothers and they get paid very well. So we had the best of everything. When I moved to South Carolina, we immediately now are going to a school that's off base that is basically, you know, we have a segment of the military kids going there, but it's all civilian kids that are going to school, and they're supported by the county, you know, and just like every other school, a lot of circumstances where these children are left behind. You know, the teachers aren't very well paid. You know, schools aren't, like, you drink the water in the school and it was like rust water. So, you know, when my mom dropped us off our first day coming from California, she cried because it was nothing that we had ever experienced or lived with up to that point. But again, my point, if I never had gone through that, I never would have been able to get to where I am, because, you know, I had to learn there how to fight, how to protect myself, and really, you know.
Did they treat you different because they knew you came from military school? Like, is that one of the reasons, or was it because you were the superstar, or what? Like, why were you out there fighting, Ray?
Well, so the first day I get there, I'm this kid coming from California, and you know, I don't have a lot. There are 5 of us. Yeah. I'm wearing shorts to school. Like, I don't have a lot of clothes. I'm wearing shorts. It was always, I lived in the desert in California.
Right. Okay.
So I'm walking down the hallway and, you know, people are calling me Bo. I'm like, Bo.
What is that?
That's a racist term coined short for boy. So then everybody used the term Bo. What up, Bo? Bo. And I was like, I don't know what you guys have heard, but my name is not Bo, it's Ray. And then, you know, I had, you know, people on me because that first day I had on shorts. So I got called to the principal's office. My dad had.
Why? Isn't it hot? What was the winter time or something? You had on shorts?
At that school, you couldn't wear shorts. You couldn't wear skirts.
Oh.
You know, because what I've also learned, you know, after that was that the kids there were faster than what I was used to, because 2 of the girls in my grade at that time were pregnant.
Oh, okay.
So
they were doing that almost as like to keep everybody calm, dress code.
Yeah. And so the other thing too is I came from an environment where, you know, they're teaching you so much about life and everything is conformed and is proper. So when I moved to South Carolina, where, you know, some kids are in my class that speak Geechee, literally, you know.
Oh.
And I'm this kid that's proper, you know. I've lived all over the world. Like, I lived in England, lived in Germany, and then now I come to South Carolina, and the way I talk threw them off because everything that came out of my mouth was so proper. So they called me a white boy.
Oh, wow.
And
so they're calling you Bo, but they're also calling you a white boy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I didn't, and that's the thing, I didn't get it. I didn't understand. I was like, what is happening? I had to deal with this. I never, ever in my wildest dreams could imagine going to school, and I had to fight all these stereotypes that were being thrown onto me. And I just was like, you know, my last school, I just went to school and everybody played with everybody, and, you know, this was an issue. So a 13-year-old kid, it was definitely heavier than what I had ever expected. So like I said, it's now you're fighting for existence, you know.
Yeah. That definitely adds a little toughness, a chip on your shoulder. I can see how that could develop you.
Yeah. And so I remember I was in science class, and one of the kids, he looked funny to me, and I was just like in class, and I said to one of these kids beside me, I said, "This dude right there looks like a dinosaur." And I learned my lesson. Right. Why did he blurt out and say, "Yo, the new kid said you look like a dinosaur"?
Okay.
Yeah, and so the homeboy wanted to throw blows. He waited for me outside the class in the hallway and was like ready to fight. And I just
did
kept
y'all fight?
Yeah, no, we didn't fight, but I just kept walking. I was like, I don't know. But this guy was like on 1,000 ready to go because, at 13, everything is like I'm protecting my pride and whatever little bit of manhood that
you don't want everyone else to start to pick on you and that to be a thing. So you have to stop it right there.
Yep.
Wow, that's crazy. Okay, so you're at UConn, unreal successful career because your jersey ends up getting retired. What are your thoughts kind of going into draft day? And it's crazy because I was just talking to Dominic Wilkins and Vince Carter on the Atlanta Hawks broadcast about just the draft day feels. Do you remember the people that you were drafted with? Like, what was your feels going into that? Did you know you were going to be that number 5 pick? Like, what did you know about it going into it?
So there was a draft party in New York. All my family was meeting me in New York. I had to fly to LA and I had to do a TV show just about leading up to the draft stuff. So all my workouts had been done. So I worked out with Philadelphia, who had the number 1 pick, Vancouver, Toronto, and Milwaukee. As I was flying back to New York, I got a call. My agent said that Minnesota, who had the 5th pick, wanted to meet with me. And so I was like, there's no way. I need to be in New York. I have some events that I got to go to. I'm not stopping in Minnesota on the way.
Right.
So I don't go. I go to New York and I meet my family. And ironically, this is the first night where I meet my future wife. At one of the yeah. So the next night, going into the draft, it was speculated that I was going to go number 4 to Milwaukee. And so before I head to the draft, I'm dressed and I'm waiting before I catch the bus and go over, and I get the phone rings, and it's ML Carr and Red Auerbach.
Okay.
Yeah, and they tell me if you make it to number 5, then we're going to pick you with the 5th pick. And so I was like, wow, yes, that means I'll still be in New England. I'll be a Celtic. And at that time, coming out of UConn, Reggie Lewis was he was an icon, to a lot of us young players, a lot of us guards, and certainly being a UConn prodigy under Calhoun and knowing that he coached them. So I was excited about that. So as the draft starts to unfold, 1, 2, 3, and then I'm watching how it works. In the green room, you see the camera go to who the next pick is. Like on TV, you don't know until you see the camera, but we see in the green room where the cameras go. So we already kind of know in advance. So number 3, we see the camera go over to Marcus Camby, and he goes to Toronto. And then 4 comes, and immediately I'm like, I'm going to Milwaukee. I'm watching.
Yeah, this is my time.
And the cameras go to Stephon Marbury.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, hell yeah, I'm going to Boston. Like, because if Milwaukee picks me, I'm going to Milwaukee, but they're picking Steph, so I'm going to Boston because I already know Minnesota has J.R. Rider.
Right.
So why would Minnesota pick me? So the 5th pick comes and the cameras come over to my table and my heart just sunk to my chest, or not to my chest, to my stomach.
Yeah. And
I couldn't understand it for the life of me why Minnesota would pick me at that time, because I don't understand the business of basketball.
Right.
They picked me and I was confused as I was sitting there, because I don't know what's happening. And, my family's like, it's all right, don't worry about it. Like, it's going to work out. And I was like, I don't understand. So then I went up there and I put the hat on, and then I go downstairs and I start getting interviewed about what it's going to be like to play with J.R. Rider. And I'm kind of bullshitting through the interview.
Because that ain't what you thought.
Yeah, I'm like, first of all, I don't know nothing about the organization. I prepared for this. I didn't visit. Why would you pick me? You don't know anything about me. So 5 minutes later, they tell us, hey, there's been a trade. So now I just get drafted and now I'm traded. So now I go further into a depression because now I've been traded already. So now I go to.
Why'd you go to depression? You felt like that like changed your stock or your value? Like what made you sad about that?
Because I didn't know when a person gets traded, you assume as a young player that, somebody doesn't want you and you're being traded. So there's a negative connotation for me as a young player that you're getting traded, especially this early in my career. I don't even have a career yet.
Right.
So I ended up sitting there and then swapping hats with Marbury. And then, so now I go back to go over doing the interviews. Now I'm doing them with Milwaukee.
Yeah.
And Milwaukee, everybody in Milwaukee is booing the trade.
I know you're lying.
Yeah. So I'm a man at this point without no home. I'm not happy at all. I was miserable because now I'm going to a place where nobody wants me. And so I was just like, man, this day couldn't have been any worse because it wasn't what I expected. So
Crazy.
So and now seeing the draft and understanding the draft and understand the business, and it's important to talk to young players. Like the half the battle is making it here. We'll figure out wherever you go, how do we make it great? But that's the thing is it's a moment of celebration. It's a moment of vindication to just say, hey, you did it. Everything that every roadblock, every naysayer that you've had in your life. Now this is that moment of vindication where you get to walk on that stage and say, wow, look, I made it. And at that point I guess, and I always tell young people this, when you get drafted, that's not the success. It's what you do once you get there, because now you have to put the work in. And I guess that was my mentality then, is I'm not happy that I'm here because it's time to put in work. And so that's probably why I was so beside myself. But if I had to do it all over again, I would have certainly enjoyed it more and just
enjoyed the process a little bit, just a little bit more. Okay, so you are with Milwaukee. Everyone knows like about how amazing your career was, but I want to talk about Jordan Brand real quick because you have a lifetime contract with them, right? Is that what they're called? Like, because you are like Mr. Like we recognize you as Jordan Brand. Like, you know what I mean? So what was that like? You're coming out of college. We were a Nike school at UConn, so it's already in the family pretty much. But what was that like? Just now you got the endorsement deals coming in, Jordan Brand. I mean, they're offering you the world.
Well, there wasn't a Jordan Brand when I first got out of college.
Oh, shut up.
Yeah, no, there was no Jordan Brand.
So you signed with Nike first and then went into Jordan Brand?
Well, I was about to sign with Fila, and I had visited Nike. We were speaking with Reebok. There was small conversations with Adidas, but Fila, they had signed Grant Hill, and then the following year they signed Jerry Stackhouse, and I had the same agent.
So they were doing things at that time. Like they were like business was good.
Yeah, and they were trying to really get in the market and compete. I think Grant was having success and the Stack came in and they wanted to keep the success going. And so what happened was the money from Fila was a little bit more. But they were placing criteria on me. Like I had to do so many things my first year in order to meet. Yeah, it was a 5-year deal. After 3, it could be eradicated if I didn't meet these criteria that they placed on me. There's like I had to be top 2 in scoring, rebounding, assists, or steals on the team. I'm like, I don't want those unreal expectations. And then so the cover, where we're on the cover of Slam Magazine, 1996 draft class, I'm actually wearing Fila on my feet because I was going into training camp with Fila, and then we reversed field because I was like, I'm not signing that contract, and I revisited my Nike deal, and they said, listen, we're thinking about putting you into this new line. We're starting a new brand called Jordan Brand, and you're going to be the first player that we're going to sign.
That's crazy, right?
Yeah. So they didn't even have a shoe. yet for me until later on into the beginning of the season, where I first started wearing the Jumpman Pro, the white shoe with the black around the lace.
Yeah,
I know what shoe you're talking
Yeah.
about.
So that was my first shoe, and I was one of the first players to wear it.
That is so crazy. Okay, so fast forward now, you still have a relationship. You're retired with them. Like, do you get sent all the new releases? Like, how many? Okay, first of all, how many pairs of shoes? Do you have a guesstimate of how many pairs of shoes you have? Like, is that even like? Just give me a guesstimate, like, because.
Well, first I have to say that I remember the kid that I never wore a pair of Jordan shoes in my life ever.
Wow.
See, that's amazing.
Yeah. So growing up, it was like I seen other kids that had them.
Yeah.
You know when you went to the hoop court and you seen that person that had Jordans on and
Had
they
everything, the sleeve, the headband, they had
but couldn't
everything.
hoop. But couldn't hoop. They had the best stuff, and they always like, "You fouled me." I was like, "Man, you don't get your." So I would say
That's awesome.
I have so much, and I've been thankful because I still remember not having anything. So what I do is I give away so much because I know.
People better not. That's not what this is about. I just know that sneakerheads love to hear about, like, how many pairs of shoes do you have? Like, what is it like being on Team Jordan to the magnitude that you are? Like one of their first signed player. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah. So I it's definitely in the thousands. Wow. Thousands of shoes.
Do they send you like the new releases when they come out too? Like, it's just you're just on that list.
Yeah.
Wow. That's amazing. But you built that because, like you said, you remember being in South Carolina in shorts, So I just to put it in perspective, like, you earned that. That's something that you had that chip on your shoulder. It grew on you. I love it. And I want to revisit your wife, Shannon, because I know you said you met her, going to the draft party. Your wife be doing things, okay? She has a restaurant for organic, healthy food. Can you just tell me about that? It's called Grown. I love, like, setting spotlight, Black-owned business.
Mm-hmm. So our now 14-year-old, he has type 1 diabetes. He was diagnosed when we were playing in the NBA Finals in 2008. And he taught us so much. When you think I'm on the biggest stage of my life, and then this happens, we had to switch directions and try to figure out how to keep this young man alive. And we were already on this path of trying to eat better, and because it was always about what I was doing in my career and how I felt at the beginning of the game and if I could last through the fourth quarter and energy. So I was always trying to figure out what was the best formula for eating. And then this happened in 2008, and it just took us to a whole nother level. And so as the kids started coming, she was the mother that was running around trying to figure out how to feed them, how to be at games for me, how to feed me. And then one moment when she had to go to a game and Walker had a low blood sugar, she has all these young boys in the car. They're all within 2 years of age of each other. At the time, it was 3 of them. And now we have 5 altogether. But she had nowhere to feed them. It was like, where do I go?
Wow, yeah.
You can't take them to McDonald's. You can't take them to certain places because you want to feed them opportunities or options that allow them to have clean, healthy food, especially when he's dealing with what he's dealing with, this condition. So she said, nobody, fast food industry is failing us because we make food for ourselves because we're fast, and we've compromised it being good for us and why we live with so many issues. Yeah. So her saying was, if nobody's going to reinvent fast food, then I'm going to have to do it. And so
I love that.
Yeah, from that day forward.
I saw a couple of the plates, salmon. And so basically it's fast food, but it's like homemade healthy food that you can get fast is how I see it, because it's like nice full meals. And so for people, it's basically what people that want to meal prep, people that like to do those type of things. If you missed a week, you missed a day, like, go Grown, basically. Get Grown, go Grown.
Yeah, and one of the cornerstone ideas that both of us were kind of working on when we were, we were out in Seattle. We were trying to figure out what organic foods do we need to eat and what don't we need to eat organic. And then as we've learned so much about food, we don't want anything that's not organic, because you understand how our food is being prepared. Like the food industry is doing us injustice. Yeah, because we say if it's made in a plant, don't eat it. If it's made from a plant, eat it. You don't want so many things that are processed, that have 50 million different ingredients on it, because what is it? It's not food at the end of the day. And then you're talking about people who are living with issues, conditions, diseases, and we're if you go back, think about 20, 30 years ago, we're so much more technologically advanced than we were 20, 30 years ago.
Facts.
Yet we are sicker. We have more issues. By 2024, 2025, one out of 4 people in the world will be affected by diabetes, meaning someone that you know in your life or someone around you will have diabetes. And so it's about how we manage our food, because we're trying to find cures for everything, but the cure is in the prevention and how we eat.
You can definitely eat yourself out of your situation, is what I call it. And our community doesn't necessarily embrace that as much as I think we should. You talked about having one son, Walker, with diabetes. Well, you have another son now that's a great basketball player. What kind of dad are you going to be? Are you going to be that hands-on dad that's like, what kind of dad are you going to be when it comes to your son in sports?
Well, it's unfolding right in front of me as we speak.
Offers all over the place.
Yeah, Walker, he played yesterday. He's 14, and my 16-year-old, he plays. They have practice today, but he plays tomorrow. And I tried to tell them small little things every little day to let them kind of absorb some ideas. I don't. My 16-year-old, 2-3 years ago, he was like fighting me on everything. I remember, just plain as day, we were in the gym and I'm telling him he's shooting free throws. Now, if this was an NBA court, you know how Jerry West is on the side of the backboard, there's a logo. He would have killed Jerry West on the backboard because he was shooting bricks like that. And I'm like, let me show you how to do it. And he was like, that doesn't feel right. I was like, just do it like this. He goes, I don't like that. That's uncomfortable. And I looked at him and I said, do you think that I would tell you to do something the wrong way?
I was just thinking, you're only Ray Allen. One of the greatest shooters ever.
And he was in defiance. And I said, buddy, I'm top 10 somewhere, top 15 everywhere. All time in the NBA in free throws. I'm not going to discourage you. If you don't want me to help you, that's another issue. I won't help you. If you want to be helped, I'm going to help you. But if not, I'll walk away. So I walked away, and he comes back and he says, Dad, I want you to help me. And so what I started doing was I started not saying anything to him, because he had to tell me that he wanted my help. It had to be from him. And so one of his friends, dad played baseball, and he's a Hall of Famer as well. And he was over his house. They live in our neighborhood. And he comes into the room and he said, yo, to his son, let's go throw some baseballs. You need get some bats, get some at bats. So he comes home and he says to my wife, he goes, Mom, how come Dad never asks me to shoot? Because what happens is it's the peer pressure of those around him as people are starting to lift themselves up and be something amazing in their own right, aside from their parents. And she said clearly to him, she goes, Ray, he's waiting for you, because this has your dream. This has to be your desire. This has to be your motivation and ambition. He's not going to come to you if you don't want it, because people expect that he's supposed to hover over you and force you to do this. But no, this has got to be yours. Like, nobody pushed me to become great or to work out every day or to hoop every day. These were my desires. I didn't have a trainer. I didn't have a rebound machine. I didn't even own a basketball. These were all things that you figure out. Now kids were like, oh, I need a trainer. If I'm going to make the team, I need a trainer. They have to have the whole thing set up. Yeah. I'm like, no, you don't need anything other than just your desire and your will to want to compete. And no matter where you are, West Virginia, South Carolina, they will find you.
Yep. I love that. Okay. So I have a couple of questions when it involves 3-point shooting contest, because I'm curious, first of all, what's your thoughts on Steph Curry? You know, just changing the game. Your name is always brought up, a Reggie Miller are always brought up, and Steph Curry and what he's done for the game. And we know he's about to pass, he's passing every record as we speak. What are just your thoughts on him and how he's changed the game?
Well, it's interesting because Reggie and I, when I broke his record, I didn't even know it was a thing because it wasn't a thing. And then when it came to me that it was about to be a thing, I was overwhelmed because I was trying to push myself or put myself in the place of the annals of NBA history, like all the great shooters that I knew, understood, respected, and grew up watching. So I just didn't understand how it could be me. But it's about being available. It's about, showing up every day. It's about keeping yourself healthy. And that was the first thing I wanted to do when I got to the NBA, because I didn't know if I was going to be good or not, but I wanted to be somebody who my teammates could count on every single day. And so with that, I tell every child the number one key to being successful. And everybody asks them the question and they say, commitment, working hard. And I said, no, the number one key to being successful is being available, because you can't do any of those things if you don't show up. Because a lot of times guys get sick, they take a day off. Oh, I don't want to do it today. Like I scored 30, I don't want to work. No, every single day you have to do it. And so that's what, when I look at Reggie, he was always in the gym when I came into the gym. And that legacy continued with me. And so kids, that came into the league, they saw that with me and my work habits. And so Steph was a young kid, and I played with his dad in Milwaukee. So he was in the gym shooting with us. And he certainly, the things that he does, are amazing out on the court. And he set a bar different from what Reggie and myself have said, because we played the game differently.
The game was different then. 3-pointers, like it wasn't a premium. Coaches didn't center everything to 3. So that was a whole different time then.
Yeah, and that's why it's important. People want to always judge or gauge generational players. And it's important that you just recognize, because without Reggie, I don't know how to do what I do. And then same thing with Steph. So it's not, we always want to like figure out who's better and how. It's like you just have to honor, because
appreciate it.
Jordan's DNA is in LeBron. It's in Kobe. So when you know that, for everybody that understands it, you're supposed to say, well, this makes Jordan the greatest of all time, because everybody wanted to be like Mike. And so you take that and you build into who you are, and you take it to another level. So every player should humbly say, like, listen, I'm no better than the guys before me, because they've given me the creative license and vision to achieve the levels I've been able to rise to based on their example. And so that's what Steph is doing now for generations underneath him. Kids are seeing what he's doing, and he's raising the bar and allowing these kids to now have something even more to ascertain to. But I will say it's harder for these kids with Steph, because Steph has the ultra green light, and when he shoots, he's shooting in really tough situations that you don't want kids at a high school level to be practicing. So it does require kids to fundamentally pay attention to the game and get those fundamental skill sets first.
No, you know what you said. I feel like that when I went to UConn. Like, if people are talking about how well I played at UConn, the player I was at UConn, well, then we got to talk about the other point guards before me, the Jen Rosati's, the Sue Birds, all of them. So I completely agree. I have to ask, because you have hit some of the most cold-blooded threes in the history of the NBA. I know, because I'm a shooter, but what goes through your head? Like, during those times, do you know the ball is coming to you? Are you just staying ready? Like, you've hit some iconic threes, can't even narrow them down, but I think of Miami is one that I really think of, because that changed the whole course of everything when you hit that 3 and gave you guys life. What's going through your head at that time?
The ball's got to come around. And when it comes around, one of the philosophies I've always lived with is that the ball finds movement. Don't let grass grow under your feet. So the whole point when I was at the 3-point line is to go in and get the rebound, because sitting at the 3-point line is not going to do me any favors, like sitting there thinking the ball can come. So I have to create some action or some energy. That's exactly. I ran in, get the rebound, and then now you relocate yourself to the 3-point line. The best time to shoot a three is
off offensive rebound.
Offensive rebound. Yeah, and because everybody scatters, and then when your man looks, you're no longer in the same place. That's why you don't stand in the same place. You move somewhere else. Being prepared and having your feet ready. That's the one thing that I look at all shooters. You know, when I'm watching kids, young kids, or even in the NBA, so many guys aren't ready. You know, so when you're not ready, you have to get ready, and then getting ready causes you a second to get your shot blocked, or you're going to have to drive the ball now because your feet weren't ready and the guy recovered. So that is the ultimate thing, is to, because when I notice the ball may be coming, now I get in a position where I only have to go one way, and that's up. So everything else is working. People say, you get your shot up so fast. I was like, no, it's my feet. You know, my feet are the ones that are moving so fast. So as I'm turning into a shot, as I'm turning the corner, my lower body's already turning. So when I catch it, I can just go right up, and it kind of, you know, it's like a twisting motion where the rest of the body just follows through, and I can get it off.
Okay, so I have to ask this too, because when we're talking about iconicness, you are Jesus Shuttlesworth. To a lot of people, that's what you will forever be, Jesus Shuttlesworth.
Yeah.
How did that come about? Like, how did you get that role?
This was after my rookie year. Spike was coming out with the movie that I didn't know anything about, and we were in New York. So Spike sits courtside heckling everybody. And at this time, I remember in the first part of the season, we played the Knicks, and Allen must have had 20 points at the half. And Spike was over there giving me hell, because he was like, man, you're going to guard Allen tonight? What are you going to do? He's dragging you. So we played in the Garden in April, and, you know, my rookie year, we're not making the playoffs. You know, we're on the way home, and Allen had a good first half, nothing great. And Spike is over there trying to get my attention, and I'm avoiding him because I'm like, he's going to talk shit to me about Allen. So I'm like, let me just keep him. And he walks over there, tries to get me, and I'm like moving, and I could feel he's trying to be around me. I'm like, so then he finally gets me. Somebody taps me and says, Spike wants you. I go over there, and he says, hey, I'm doing a basketball movie, and I want you to audition. You know, there's a couple different parts, and I would like you to audition and see if you'd like to be in it. And so
you've never acted before this? No,
I mean, I've done plays in middle school, but I've never really formally acted. And then we exchanged. I gave my number. He called my guy, and then they set it up. And the season was over. A couple weeks later, I left Milwaukee. I was in Connecticut for the summer, and I drove down, and I came in for interviews. And, you know, I didn't know what was going to come of it. I came down like 3 times, and then he offered me the main part. Yeah.
And so you didn't even know you were auditioning for the main part?
Well, yes, I was auditioning for the main role of Jesus, but he also said, if you don't get the main role, there's other roles of characters, his teammates and other people in the movie, that you could potentially secure the lead for. So I was just going in, reading and figuring out, like, the first time I went in and I read was Sally Richardson, and she was auditioning for La La the movie, and then Nicole Parker was auditioning for La La. So I had to do scenes with both of them. They're actresses.
Yeah.
I had to do these scenes with them, and I had to get real, like, comfortable and cozy with them, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And then my third read was with Denzel. And so
tell me, like, what was that like? This is Denzel.
Yeah. So I'm in the NBA now, so I've been around, you know, a lot of players, like been around Michael Jordan. To me, he was like the pinnacle of success or celebrity for me, meeting Michael Jordan. And so I got over that and understanding that, but it's still such an honor and a privilege. So when Denzel walks into the room, I just couldn't believe it, but I was still cool because, you know, I'm just a normal everyday person. And I just was like, you know, once you see him, I couldn't believe it. And I started thinking about all the things that I seen him in and how much of a fan that I was of his. And so we read the scenes, and he immediately started calling me son, like, you know, son, like filling out this role of him being my dad, because obviously he's the main character. And so it was comfortable. Like we had such a good rapport. And so, but here's the funny part. I don't know what's going to come of this. I don't even know how it works to get a major movie like this.
Yeah.
You know, obviously I kept getting asked back, and he wanted to see what I looked like around a couple of different people. And then I was in Connecticut and I was willing to commit. That was the last thing he said. Are you willing to commit to this for the whole summer? Because you're going to lose your whole summer.
That's what I was going to say. How long did it take to film?
Yeah. So I had, you know, in May, I had to start acting classes. So I was in a studio apartment in New York, like working with this acting coach that was, you know, they put me up in an apartment in the village. And so I was going to take these classes. And when we first started shooting, it's everything. It's pre-production. They had to figure out what clothes you're going to wear, like which side is your best side, color, and all this stuff. And then you got to go through these reads with the whole cast. And then, you know, once he's assembled the whole cast, we're all sitting around the table and we read through the whole script. And then once they start shooting, like we started shooting in the first scene was like in Coney Island. We shot the basketball scene. And then like the last scene, we shot campus, you know, college campus. And that was right before I went to training camp. So I legitimately wrapped in October. So I went from May all the way till October. Yeah. So I was working the whole summer, and I'm so thankful that I did that, because there are a lot of guys that didn't want to give up the time because they wanted their summer. They wanted to, and when you look back at it in hindsight, you ask yourself, what did I do? What would I have done?
You made yourself available. That's that thing you talked about.
Make yourself available. That's how you become successful. But going back to Denzel, so after we did the scene, we were, he was talking about he had somewhere that he had to go. And I said, we can give you a ride, because we had a limo outside. You know, a friend of ours in Connecticut, you know, Ambassador Limousine, you know, we had a relationship with UConn. So we had a car service that happened to be a limo. Nobody rides limos anymore.
No one takes
them. Yeah, that's why it's funny. Like, you had a limo? Yeah, limo. So we was like, we can give you a ride. So I'm like, cool. So we're giving Denzel Washington a ride, you know, to his hotel. So we're in the car just riding down the street. And I'm just like sitting here, and I was like, so this is how, you know, the big guys do it. You ride in the limo, and I'm riding with Denzel here. And Denzel looks out the window and he says, you know what? I'm gonna get out right here. He's by himself. We're somewhere on the east side, like Tribeca area. He was like, you know what? I'm gonna get out, and I'm gonna take off. And he's got an afro. This is when he's getting ready for the role, so his stuff is out to here. So I was like, you sure? He was like, yeah, I'll get out and walk the rest of the way. He gets out the car and he goes to the side of the street, and he's walking, and he comes to the end of the street, and it's a stoplight. And, you know, he's standing next to people. I was like, oh, I wonder if these people know that's Denzel. And then I look across the street, and there's like 4 women across the street, and they look up and they go bonkers because they see him. And I was like, bad move. And then he greeted them, and then he kept it moving. And the girl, you know, nobody had camera phones back then.
Yeah.
You know, nobody had cell phones. This was, well, some people did, but it wasn't like it is now. So they hugged him, and then, you know, they just like, they couldn't believe it. And then he kept moving. I was like, wow, that's New York for you to be able to.
Where was he going?
He was just walking back to his hotel, but, you know, he lives in California. So New York gives you that sense of adventure and freedom when you can walk down the streets and, you know, see so much and see so many different types of people. And I think he wanted that sense of.
He was probably studying too. Like, I feel like everything he does is almost like he was probably studying New York, the vibes.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree.
Right. I thank you for talking to me. Honestly, like I could have talked to you. Like, I feel like we were just having a conversation. I was asking you everything, but
you recorded all that?
Huh?
That was all recorded. I thought we were just having a conversation.
No, we are, but it's just like, I want to ask you everything, because I think that people should hear you have a crazy story, and I mean crazy in the best way possible. And so I want people, like, see, something just popped in my head now that I have to ask you real quick. You told me and Drew Holiday, that we need to make sure we tell our own story. We need to write a book and tell our own story. Why do you say that? Why is that important?
So many different reasons. So I always feel bad because I was born in this era where You could pull up my clips on YouTube or they'll flash on Instagram, and people will send me things that I did, and they have that connectivity to my college years. I have a buddy of mine that sends me all these clips on Twitter from when we played at UConn. So many that don't have that. We see only a few clips from Dr. J, only a few from Bill Russell, Will Chamberlain. They're like the same clips because they weren't covered the way we are, and specifically those today. So what happens is there's a generation of Black people who we don't know. That's why Black History Month is so important. It's important. We live our history all year long, but in February, we have the opportunity to allow other people to tell our stories, because there's so many people that have been so impactful in the building of this world, not just America, but in this world. And it's no slight to anybody else that, we're talking about just Black people, but I want people to remember, for the longest time, we haven't been able to read. It was illegal to read, to write, to learn, to use a restroom in a city or a restaurant. Those things were illegal. It wasn't like we couldn't do them. We were told we would be killed, and we were killed in a lot of instances if we did them. And so a friend of my accountant, he tells me this story all the time. He said his mother, the insurance man, when they have insurance men, they would come to the neighborhood every Friday, and they collect money for insurance. And she had to pay a quarter every Friday, and her policy was only worth $1,000. And her whole life, she paid a quarter, way over the policy. And if she no longer paid that quarter, her policy would lapse. Even though she's paid way over the policy, that's all it was worth, was $1,000.
Yeah, she's covered it.
Yes, but the way they did Black folks in the history of this country, they didn't allow us to amass any wealth. We couldn't buy homes in certain neighborhoods, so we couldn't carry mortgages, so we couldn't put our kids through college. When you look at the average person in America, the white person, like if you bought a home in a neighborhood whose value went up, you use that to put your kids through college. Whether you had an average job where you were working and your wife was working, you were still able to put your kids through college because you could take out a mortgage on your home, and the value of your homes continue to go up. And that's how wealth has been transferred down through generations. And so stories also do the same thing. To understand our brilliance, to understand our legacies, we have to transfer what we've done, what we know, who we are, across the generations. There's a story about how Black people in coastal communities all up and down the South, their properties have been taken away from them because they didn't properly, based on societal laws, have an estate plan to transfer their property to their to their kin. So there's a story about a family in North Carolina. They have fishing on their land. They have juke joints on their land. They have farms on their land, but the original family member that owned it died. And so now the state has been trying to take that land away from them, and developers have been coming onto that land trying to figure out how to parcel this land apart so they could build resorts on it. It's like these people want to take their property from them. And this has happened. Key Biscayne used to be, Black owned territory. You can go all up and down the eastern seaboard down to the south and see those same stories. And so when people write books and tell their stories, they tell the history of the legacy of their families, the great legacies that we have been told that we couldn't talk about, that we couldn't write down, that we couldn't remember. Transferring knowledge is wealth. And so each of us Black and brown people have to make sure that we tell our stories, because if we don't tell our stories through books, somebody else will tell them, and 9 times out of 10, they're going to get it wrong. One, and then two, now think about this, because this is super important. When you write a book, how do movies become movies?
Yeah,
transcribe
books, but they turn into visuals.
Right. So when we write books, that's how books turn into movies. And then when you have stories about Black and brown people in America and around the world that turn into movies, what happens in the movies? Now you have to have a Black athlete or a black actress or actor portray. So now you're giving more black people in Hollywood jobs because there's more stories being told, which thus then gives the diversity that we're looking for in our world. Because young black and brown people, when you see movies where there are black people, it's not that we haven't helped build this country. It's just that our stories haven't been told. So now we're allowing black folks to be acting where there's diversity, where you're saying, okay, yeah, I could see this black person as a doctor. Dr. Charles Drew, you know, is a black man, but his story has never been told because he hasn't, I don't know, I'm sure he has literature somewhere that tells a story, but did he write it? You know, did he tell his story? Did his family pass it down? Like, I'm sure there's something interesting about his story that we should know, that we should learn, that can be a story. And it gives somebody work in Hollywood that then allows America to see the diversity in how this country was built.
Beautiful. The transfer of knowledge is wealth. I'm going to keep that with me because that's important. I think it's so important. Ever since you told me the first time, it stuck with me. So definitely going to do that. And Ray, thank you so much for joining me on Remotely Renee.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Renee. Awesome to talk to you. And UConn alum, I'm so proud of you and happy with everything you're doing and continue to do. So let's keep giving them hell.